Bonjour, je m'appelle Madame Fournier, and I am here to teach you how to use WordReference.com to improve your writing in French. So, for starters, when you first sign on to WordReference.com, usually what's going to come up is English Spanish because that's the default. So, you want to make sure you're on the right language. You'll see if you click this down arrow, there are many different languages available to you. So, we want to go to English to French. Make sure we're in the right language. And by the way, if you click on these two little arrows here, you can go from French to English, English to French very easily. Just toggle back and forth. So I'm going to start with English to French and give you an example of how to use this very useful online dictionary. If I don't know the word for house, I could type in house and find it in French. Now, this may look a little bit overwhelming because here we have a lot of information. If you scroll down, there's a lot of information. But really, most of the time, you're just going to need to look at the first word or translation that you have. So if I look here, it says house, residence, building. So if I'm saying I live in a house, then I look over here under français and it says maison. The NF stands for noun feminine. So as you know, words in French are either masculine or feminine. So I know here that I'm going to say la maison or une maison because it's feminine. If it were masculine, I would say un or le. And so that's useful to know. You have to be careful because there are lots of different definitions of house or different words that might be used in a different context. So, for example, just right down here, abriter, if I look at that, it says VTR, means transitive verb, which don't worry about the transitive part, but it's a verb, and you'll notice it ends in ER, which a lot of verbs do. So this is not a house that you live in. This is to house someone, to provide a storage space. So you need to be really careful to make sure you have the correct word. Sometimes it helps if I type in, let's say I want to switch French to English, and I type in maison. Let's see what comes up. House, construction, building or property. Okay, that looks right. Another cool thing is that I can click here and make sure I know how to pronounce it. So let's listen.
Maison, maison,
You can also listen to the Canadian pronunciation.
maison,
So it sounds just a teeny bit different, just like British English is different from American English. If I go back to house, so if I go back here, I can click right on that. I can listen to it in English. I can listen to Scottish English. We could go down a rabbit hole there. We're not going to do that. So anyway, there's a lot of information. So you might find, for example, if you're thinking about a House of Parliament or the House of Representatives, a political house, that would be une chambre, which is also the word for bedroom, which you may have learned already. So there we go, House of Commons, la Chambre des Communes. So again, sometimes when we look up a word, we're not immediately thinking of what it might be, or some other translations that might show up on word reference. So you just have to look really carefully. Sometimes looking at the sample sentences can really help make sure that you've got the right word. Let's do one more example here. So if I type in play, first thing that comes up, which is usually, again, what is going to be the one you're looking for, not always, but usually, here I see jouer. So that's a verb. It's an infinitive, which means that it's not conjugated. So when you put it in a sentence, you have to make the verb ending match the subject, whoever's doing the playing. More on that in a moment. Verbs in infinitives in French end in er, ir, or re. So you'll notice even in the sample sentence, the children are playing, les enfants jouent. This looks different from this because it's been conjugated to go in the sentence. So we'll talk about the verb conjugation in a minute, but again, you have to make sure you have the right play. So for example, if I go down a little bit further, jouer can also mean to play a role in theater. I can also have the noun for play. So if I want to go see a play in a theater, that's a noun. person, place, or thing. That's une pièce. Okay, and again, here I can tell that it's a feminine noun. Verbs don't have gender, but nouns do. So une pièce or la pièce. So if I were going to see Hamilton, I would describe that as une pièce, and I might talk about the actors and actresses that play a role, and that would be jouer. So again, just making sure that you have the right word. Now let's say we have jouer, and I know that that's the word I want to use, and I want to put it in a sentence, but oh my gosh, verbs are so hard, and I can't remember how to conjugate a verb. So what I would do is go up here to conjugaison. So the conjugator in French is here, and I would click on that. And then it gives me, again, lots of information, way more than you need. If you are in high school, you might use a bunch of these things, like passé composé, for example, will be to say, I played soccer yesterday. J'ai joué au foot hier. But most of the time in middle school or in French 1 and maybe French 2, you will be looking at present tense. So I play, je joue. So notice it doesn't end in ER anymore. The ending for, this is a regular ER verb. The ending for je is E. The ending for tu is ES, etc., etc. So if I want to say they play, I would say il or elle joue. If I want to say we play, nous jouons, etc. So focusing just on this part, you don't need to worry about the other stuff. Also, in talking about verbs, you need to be aware of how to think about different verb tenses a little bit, because sometimes what might happen is you might go to word reference and you might type in, for example, brought. Okay, like I brought my sister a present. That's going to bring you to the infinitive. So brought is past tense. So like yesterday, I brought my sister a present because it was her birthday. But if I look it up, it's going to have bring there. Okay, so you can even just start with bring if you're trying to find brought and make sure you get the right word. Sometimes one word in English will have multiple words in French that go with it. So, for example, in French, to bring a thing, to carry something, STH is something, is apporter. But if I'm bringing a person, like taking somebody with me on a trip, it's amener. Okay, so sometimes it's a completely different word. Conversely, sometimes you might have several words in English that are one word in French. For example, if I want to say French people, I don't need to say anything like les gens français. I mean, I can, but it sounds a little awkward. All I have to say is les français with a capital F, and that means French people. If I want to say British people, I would say les Anglais, etc., or les Britanniques. So sometimes it's not the exact same number of words in one language or the other. So being aware of that is helpful. Sometimes if you have a phrase or an expression that is several words in English and you're trying to translate it, if you can think of a synonym that is one word, it's easier to look up on WordReference. So that's another pro tip. So let's say I wanted to say I brought my sister a present. Again, I can go to apporter and I can click conjugaison, conjugation, and there I have all the forms. And if I know how to use past tense, I might say j'ai apporté. If you're trying to say I will bring, you have sometimes what students will do is they will look up the word will. Okay, so if I go to English to French, toggling with that, I might type in will, and I might look, I don't really see anything there. If I'm kind of not paying attention, I might look here and go, oh, testament, that's got to be it. Je testament apporter un cadeau or something like that. But no, this is the will that somebody writes when they want to make sure that their favorite cousin gets their game with their Xbox or something when they die. It's your last will and testament. So that's not the correct word. That, if you notice again, that's a masculine noun. So it's le testament. You wouldn't turn it into a verb. So if again, I go back to bring, okay, and I try to simplify it, and I go to the conjugation. What could I do? Let's see. I know I learned future proche, like I'm going to bring. I haven't learned the future tense yet. So I'm going to try to simplify it and still get my point across. So if I say I'm going to bring, oh, wait a minute. That's the verb aller, but I don't remember how to conjugate that. That's irregular. What the heck? This is hard. Oh, wait. No, it's not that hard. I remember studying that. So there we go. Je vais. And then I would just use an infinitive. I would say je vais apporter. So I wouldn't have to conjugate the second verb. But here I would, or if I wanted to say, you all are going to bring, vous allez apporter le dessert. You're going to bring the dessert. So be careful of that. One last thing is that if you are spelling something incorrectly in English, that's going to cause a problem. So let's say you're cooking a fancy meal and you're going to make you need a vegetable side and you're going to make baby peas. If you spell it wrong and you type it in this way, peas, that's different. That's like going pee-pee, okay? And you might think about this famous statue in Belgium called Le Mannequin Peace, which is a little boy peeing. So baby peas versus baby peas. So if I go back to word reference and I go, oh, wait a minute, I spelled that wrong. Peas. Oh, petit pois. Yeah, that's the word for the vegetable. Okay, so spelling counts. Make sure you're spelling it correctly and that you have the right part of speech. So that's a noun. Peeing, P-E-E-S, that is a verb. So you want to use the noun if you're saying I'm putting baby peas in the salad or whatever it happens to be. Okay, so spelling counts and context matters. Read the sample sentences, check the part of speech. Go back and forth and study it in two different directions, French to English, English to French, and I think you'll be in good shape. When in doubt, ask your teacher. That's what I'm there for. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.